Let's look at how to mix vocals in this video, specifically in Logic Pro, but you don't have to be using Logic. This will be kind of DAW agnostic with the things I'm going to teach in this video. It might be on the longer side because there's so much involved when it comes to mixing vocals and how you do it. It's very much an art form. It's a subjective thing. We're going to get into that. Hopefully, though, at the end of this video, you'll understand how you could go from something like this lead vocal I have here without any effects, very dry.
'Cause I know I've been fading before.
Just play a little bit.
You had the chance to play me. I wanted to believe it, but oh no, something's gone and changed me. Loving you was all I ever wanted, but
Okay, now let's apply the processing, and I'll even go so far to unsolo all the doubles and harmonies, which we will touch on. So you can go to this.
'Cause I know I've been fading before. You had the chance to play me. I wanted to believe it, but oh no, something's gone and changed me. Loving you was all I ever wanted, but everything is different since we started.
Okay, so let's dive into that. I'm going to make some notes here in the side. So how to mix vocals. There's questions right off the bat, like what genre do you want? What style? What feel? These are all things that will be specific to your style, genre, feel of music. If it's a hip hop vocal versus an R&B vocal versus a piano ballad vocal, like an Adele vocal versus a Kid Laroi vocal, they're completely different. So that needs to be considered when you're mixing a vocal before you even start anything. So this, it's in this indie pop world, this vocal. So there is a lot of processing involved. So if you're in that kind of pop indie world, this can, be very transferable to a lot of genres. Now let's break it down into these kind of topics. So we have really things that affect the vocal and affect the mix of the vocal, but it's not really mixing. So we have three parts really. We have one, not mixing. Two, we have, let's call it mixing in solo. So just affecting the lead vocal and the effects on that. And then mixing in the track. So let's talk about each of these three different pillars. So the first one, not mixing. This has to do with lyrics and melody. These are two huge things that will affect the vocal. Sometimes if your vocal is not awesome, it could be that your lyric that you've chose or the melody isn't awesome. And so the vocal takes the blame for that because it's the thing doing what the lyrics and melody tell it to do. So if you have a bad melody, bad lyrics, well, it's going to sound like the vocal is bad. So those two things need to be considered, and that actually has to do with the songwriting. The next big thing here is performance. This is probably the biggest one, to be honest. It comes down to recording the vocal. And I want to talk mostly about the performance of the actual emotion that you can put into the vocal when you're either recording yourself or recording another artist that you have in your studio. So whenever you are recording or recording someone else, you need to take the time and take the hours to get really good vocal performances because that's your raw ingredients. If you can have great raw ingredients, we can build on from there. If you have a bad performance, you can only go so far from there. So that's performance on the emotional side. Then we have recording vocals. This vocal specifically, this lead vox here, was recorded with compression and EQ already. So it's an even signal and it has a bit of color from the EQ, and I'm using the Apollo interface. So I add some of these analog preamps like this one. You can add preamps, EQs, and types of compression before it actually hits the recording. If you can compress and EQ a bit of the vocal before it's recorded, usually helps in the mixing phase because you're going to get a really solid, even signal. So when we start mixing, it's already kind of good in a way where it sounds good. Like that dry vocal here, all the effects, it's pretty decent, right?
I wanted to believe it, but oh no, something's gone.
Because it's already, and that's because it's already compressed in a tiny bit of EQ. Two more things in this not mixing category, it would be this one, timing. This comes down to the production. It's having that timing in the pocket. And that has to do with going through the vocal, listening to it with your backbeat or your song, and making sure it's in time. That's going here and cutting things and moving things around by nudging them, holding Option, nudging to the right, nudging to the left. All these little things that I'm talking about all add up to a really, really, really great vocal, and that all is involved in the mixing side of things. So timing, another huge thing. The last thing here in not mixing, it's actually kind of mixing. So this could be in pillar 2, but it's editing. This happens to do with, getting rid of all those little lip smacks or breaths that are too big, or if you've done a comp and you have breaths fading into each other. What helps is after you finish your comp, listening to it in solo, making sure you don't hear any pops and smacks and breaths. And that means going in there and first starting blowing up your signal here. And see, look at all this little bits of audio in there. You could even go in and take that stuff out. But it's mostly those little things, the breaths and smacks and pops need to be completely gone from the dry vocal. Okay, now let's take a look at the traditional mixing sense of pillar number 2. So mixing in solo. You can see here on a typical vocal in a chain, you definitely have EQ. You would have compression. You'd probably have some type of auto tune up here. You'd have reverb, you'd have delay. I'm not going in order of chain here. Let's just get them all out. We'd have de-essing. We could have more declicking type of high-end annoying stuff going on. I'll just put volume here, and I'll put an overall color. Color as in maybe a plugin that brings out a nice high brightness, or an EQ that brings something colorful to the sound. This is definitely not an exhaustive list of what you might see in a vocal. And I'm not going to get into bussing versus on the chain in this video. I'm just going to talk about like an overall way about it, because I don't want to go down the road of teaching you bussing yet. I do have other videos on that if you're interested. Okay, let's look at an EQ. So you might have different types of EQs. One EQ might be something surgical like this, where in this vocal there was a lot of harsh frequencies, especially on this word sung. Long words like that. This is my vocal, by the way, and I know that there's harsh frequencies in that 2K range, so I take them out with a surgical EQ. Then I add a pitch correction, an auto tune just to smooth out the vocal. Then I add a compressor. This is a CLA, Chris Lord Algae compressor. It also comes with a EQ, delay, pitch correction as well, and reverb, but I'm not using those. I'm just really using the compression. This is more of a multi-band compressor. I don't use this often on vocals, but I did in this one because of the harsh frequencies that are standing out. And it's just taking those frequencies in that harsh range down a little bit. If I turn it on here. Just these frequencies that are really standing out. The multi-band compressor is just helping tame those. A de-esser, really important. Another great de-esser that I've recently got in the meantime of making this song is the Izotope De-Essers and declicks and all this de-esses and de-hums. Really, really great plugins, and they work super well. So a de-esser is very important on a vocal, especially when this is coming back to lyrics. If your lyrics have a lot of S's, then the de-esser is even more important. So apply the de-esser. Here's Fresh Air. This is a color plugin. What I was saying down here in the color, this is adding a bit of sparkle. Don't get carried away with this plugin. It's because it can be great, but it also can be bad if you add too much highs and you're listening to it on speakers and there's a nice balance with the lows. As soon as you put AirPods on, it's going to just be such a disaster if you push this plugin too much. Then I have a reverb, and I also have more reverb and delay. So this is just a Valhalla plate reverb. With just these on, we have
I wanted to believe it.
Much more compressed, and now it's in a space.
I wanted to believe it, but oh no, something's gone and changed me.
So this is all pillar 2. We're mixing in solo. We're bringing out the vocal to make it sound pro. And then we have mixing in the track, where we have to make this fit in with the track. So coming back to this, we have bus 2, which is a Valhalla reverb again. And this is a compressor being side chained to this bus 15. What this does is actually, this Valhalla smooth plate is actually being sidechained to the dry vocal. So what's happening there is when I'm singing, that reverb in the background is being suppressed. And when I'm not singing, that reverb lets go and shines. So try to hear that and you'll see it with the compressor.
Something's gonna change.
Reverb being compressed.
Me.
Now let go.
Loving
Let's go.
you was all I ever wanted, but everything is different.
You can really hear it at the ends of the words. Like in this space here, the compressor will release itself and you'll hear the reverb.
Me. I wanted to.
This just helps making your mix less muddy, because if you didn't have that compressor, and you don't always have to do this, by the way, this is just a style thing, but you can compress that reverb with the dry signal so it's not always flush with the track. And then at the end of this bus channel, there's another EQ. You do want to EQ your reverbs so they are not muddy. And here's an EQ on this reverb. So it's cutting everything below 329. And on this bus 8, we have an Echo Boy delay also being compressed. And I'm actually putting this delay in a reverb.
To believe it, but oh no, something's gonna change me.
I like that. And there's another EQ as well. See, the thing is, when you use bus channels as opposed to having it on the plugin, it gives you a lot more flexibility to design the effect. For example, I added an Echo Boy. Now I can compress that. I can add a reverb. I can go in here and add a phaser or chorus, distortion, only to that bus channel. In this case, it's a Echo Boy, a delay, and reverb. One thing I didn't add on this channel that I would be an RX8 declick. It's also coming from the Izotope plugins. Open up this plugin and it takes away the clicks. I just happen to have a lot of clicks on my vocal anyway, so I love just taking those away just to clean it up. So that's pillar number 2, mixing the vocal to make it really present. And a lot of that happens to come down, if I were to prioritize these, would be to the compression and the reverb and the EQ, shaping that. Now we have the third pillar, which is taking this and mixing it in with the entire track. Now, this is very difficult to teach because each track is different. And in this track, there's a lot of things going on. So we have drums, bass, electric guitars, Junos, pads, keys, effects. There's a lot of things going on. So you'd have to spend the time making, and if this is true, if your vocal is the priority, having that instrumental surround the vocal and carving out space for the vocals to sit within those instrumentals.
'Cause I know I've been faded before you had the chance to play me. I wanted to believe it, but oh no, something's gonna change me.
One thing that really helps this pillar is automation, making sure that your vocal is sitting appropriately between the dynamics of the track. So verse, pre-chorus, chorus. Sometimes the chorus is sung louder. Sometimes you want the chorus vocal to be a bit louder. Sometimes you want the verse vocals to be a bit quieter. You can see here that I did some volume automation with the lead vocal, just a dB or even half a dB, between the verse and chorus here. So doing a bit of automation will help you make your vocals sit in the mix better. One thing that will also help your vocals sit within the mix is doubling your vocals. You don't have to do this on every track, and some tracks don't even need it. But you can do it on some that it helps, which is basically when you double vocals, you sing the same thing. And I have actually 3 doubles in this one. 1 to the left, 1 to the right, and 1 up the middle. Again, that's not a hard or fast rule. You could do 1 up the middle, you could do 1 on the left, 1 on the right. But with the doubles, solo,
before
now with the doubles.
You had the chance to play me.
Makes it more thick and makes it more wide. So that's going to help it stand out in the mix. Another great thing is harmonies. And that's what really makes this one stand out, is these harmonies down here, these 2 stacks. I have a chorus harmonies and post-chorus harmonies. Look at all those vocals. That's insane.
Before Play me.
One thing that's making these really pop out and come back in is because I've cut away all this dead space. I've really compressed them so they're really popping out and then coming right back in. And that's going to add a nice dynamic to your lead vocal that's making that shine. And then we have the same thing in the post chorus. Not as much, but still quite a lot.
All I ever wanted.
And again, just like on these chorus and post chorus vocals, you want to make sure that you're having a good performance, that you are editing those breaths and clicks, and you are EQing, you are doing both these pillars as well with any other vocal track. The doubles are the same. With all of these things, we have this.
I know I've been fading before you had the chance to play me. I wanted to believe it.
And now's the time to start adding those. Usually I would mix the doubles and harmonies to the lead vocal and have that balance be a nice balance. And then I would work in the rest of the instrumentation, depending on where I'm at with the mix and with the production. Considering I am a producer and mixer, I'm doing that simultaneously throughout the process. So in this perspective, I have most of the instrumentation in already. So I would now bring in the other elements.
Before you had the chance to play me, I wanted to believe it, but oh no, something's gone and changed me. Loving you was all I ever wanted, but everything is different since we started. We're one and the same, playing this game, so we gotta find some kind of way to break this chain.
And at this point, it's about being fluid, of going back to pillar 2 and saying, well, the reverb I chose is not sitting in there, or the reverbs on the harmonies aren't sitting in there, or I need a shorter reverb or a longer reverb, or maybe it's I took out too much low end of the vocal and now it's sounding too thin. Having the perspective of listening to everything now, not just things in solo, because no one listens to tracks in solo. You listen to a song and you have to picture now, how does the vocal and the vocals, how do they sit in perspective of every other element in the song? That's how to mix vocals in Logic Pro. And if you're curious to learn more about this stuff, actually, if you're curious about this song too, this was a song that I wrote for a course on Logic that I teach. And I wrote this song from scratch, produced this song, and I mixed it and mastered it. So if you're interested in that type of thing, you can check out a link in the description to learn more. If not, cool. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.